will Spurs line up under Thomas Frank? Let's get straight into it. Starting in goal, I actually think there's an interesting call to make here. Brentford focused a lot on their deep build-up, and Flecken touched the ball as much as any other goalkeeper in the league. Those medium distant passes where you draw the opposition onto you and then you look for those sort of chipped passes out to the fullback or wing-back type situation have been huge for Brentford, and so in that regard Kinski would be the better fit. But having said that, obviously shot stopping is the first priority for a goalkeeper, and I don't see Frank making a call as bold as dropping Vicario for Kinski. It's certainly early on, so we are going to start with Vicario in there. Okay, and now it is time to talk about formation. So obviously Thomas Frank is strongly associated with the back three, but this season, and not for the first time, we've seen him play quite a lot of 4-2-3-1, and I also think he would simply tweak, as he often does, tweak how he does things to the squad that's available to him, and the squad that's available to him is very much a back four squad. But having said that, when he does play a back four, certainly this season, he tends to play asymmetrically, so one fullback deep and one fullback high. Obviously at Spurs you've got Udogie on the left and you've got Porro on the right, and I think that largely lends itself to the way that would be orientated. Now, is playing a sort of essentially wide centre-back role the most optimal use of Udogie's abilities? Probably not, but for the sake of the team, I think he's a good enough fit. So let's put those two in. Obviously, the first choice centre-backs are Van der Ven and Romero. Romero has been linked away, so best case scenario, I think Romero is still playing that right centre-back role. But obviously there's a possibility that either Danso is moved into that role, or we reinvest the money from Romero's sale and Danso remains the second choice for both sides at centre-back. So let's lay out a 4-2-3-1 here. So midfield is an interesting one. There isn't a ton you can learn about midfield profiles from Brentford's existing team, because obviously both the midfielders at Brentford are largely tasked with defending and working really hard and going up and down and controlling transitions, whereas at Spurs you'd expect to have a fair bit more on the ball. And so I think that while the current squad would be suited to playing, you know, a combination of Bissouma, Bentancur, Bergvall, Gray, Sarr, we would probably look to put all of those players into a single profile, moving on most likely Bissouma, possibly another as well, and then look to complement that profile, that up and down runner, that ball winner, with a more technical, creative player alongside them. So I'm going to give myself my one free hit here and leave that one blank, and then we'll put in Bentancur and Bergvall to sort of share a role as the complementary up and down midfielder. Hey, we're midway through the video, so do you like my t-shirt? I absolutely love my t-shirt. It is Mickey van der Ven clearing the ball off the line in the Europa League final, and it says, "Lads, it's Tottenham." If you want a shirt like mine, head to extrainch.shop. Okay, the number 10, that's obviously Maddison. He's our number 10. That suits him perfectly. That's the role played by Damsgaard right now at Brentford. I think that one explains itself. I think the wings are a bit more interesting. So obviously currently at Brentford they play Mbemu on the right and they play Sharda on the left. And I always talk about Mbemu as having the sort of Mohamed Salah type profile, where it's all about just being super efficient. So a ball comes way over the top, Mbemu runs onto it, brings it down perfectly first time, most times, under pressure often, squares up his man 1v1, and then doesn't actually technically register what would be considered a take on or a dribble by the likes of Opta or StatsBomb, but gets just enough separation from his man that he can get off either a shot, most likely, or sometimes a killer pass, and just registers up those goals and assists. That's what his game was all about. Super efficient, the Salah and Mbemu profile, ball over the top, turn it into something instantly. And then outside of that, maybe not offering a ton, right? Outside of that, staying wider, putting in decent crosses, occasionally driving his man, again, not really registering take-ons, not really registering dribbles, but just being that secondary goal scorer to a really high level in the team. And to be honest, on the left, Sharda isn't playing a dramatically different role. He's really tall, really fast, moves well off the ball, and his job is also to kind of make those runs and get in the box and press hard and be a nuisance and cause issues that way. He does run with the ball sometimes too, but again is not a fantastic ball carrier, not a fantastic dribbler. And so that's where I think there would be a departure in style from what Frank's currently doing at Brentford, where both wingers are sort of mainly focused on scoring goals. At Spurs you can probably have a lot more of the ball, you can have a more patient possession game, game. So I think that you would probably look to still keep one of these wide players as a secondary goal scorer, as a wide goal threat. And obviously for that you've got Johnson on the right and you've got Son on the left, but I think he would also balance that, where if you're playing Son on the left, you might play probably Kulusevski on the right. Obviously, over the last season, Kulusevski has spent a lot less time on the wing because he didn't have the sort of athletic profile that Postecoglou probably wanted to be taking his man on. And Kulusevski's moved inside. And then obviously on the left, you've got Odegaard, who is a ball carrier, who is a dribbler, who will take his man on. So I think you will probably look to balance those profiles, right? So when you play Son on the left, you play Kulusevski on the right. When you play Johnson on the right, you play Odegaard on the left, and you get that kind of balance. And I also think when you do play Kulusevski on the right, you can do something that Frank really likes to do, which is have this kind of positional variability between the fullback and the winger. So sometimes Kulusevski moves inside, and then Porro provides the width on the right. And sometimes Kulusevski moves wide, and then Porro can tuck inside and be that sort of dynamic, inverted, attacking fullback. And you get a nice mix, and you can confuse the opposition by giving them two different situations to look at. At the same time, I think you can do a balancing act between Porro and the number 8 here. So when the number 8 pushes up, maybe Porro stays a little deeper, stays behind the ball. And then if Porro pushes up high, then you can keep your centre midfielder behind the ball. So you're always keeping a 3-2 behind the ball, and you're getting that nice balance where you've got 5 dedicated attackers, 5 dedicated what they call rest defence, and between Porro and the midfielder you can look to balance it out, supporting the attack and supporting the defence in balance. And obviously it's Solanke up top. So what would we be looking to bring into this? So obviously straight away you've got the gap where we're looking for a creative pass. So I'm thinking the likes of Ezequiel Palacios at Bayer Leverkusen. I'm thinking Hugo Sotelo at Celta de Vigo. I'm thinking Hayden Hackney at Middlesbrough. I'm thinking Angelo Stiller at Stuttgart. I'm thinking Adrian Bernabe at Parma Calcio. Obviously, ideally, you would have, in fact, 2 players to cover that role, but realistically, you're not going to see that much turnover in midfield. We're not going to move on several existing midfielders, so I think likely Bentancur and Bergvall are occasionally picking up that role, which might not be the optimal profile, but we have to get through the season. There's talk of Son potentially moving on because he has put in a hell of a long shift at Tottenham, and he can cap it off with the trophy that he's won and move on from Spurs, realistically a Spurs legend. And that's a really nice, neat, fitting end to his time at Tottenham. Who would you look to bring in? Would you keep that profile, look for a goal scorer from the left, or would you diversify and say, okay, now Odegaard takes over on the left and we look to bring more in, or would you look to bring in a purchase? Not sure about that. Obviously Spurs have an option and they're negotiating for Mathys Tel. For me, yeah, Tel could play that goal scorer from the left, tuck in a little more, although then there's not much width provision coming from the left in that case, but he could play that role. I also quite like the idea longer term of him being a backup number 9 and eventually taking over at number 9, because I just think that his ball striking is so incredible. That would mean moving on Richarlison, because we just think that his body can't handle the minutes in the Premier League, but man, when he has played, he's been fantastic. So maybe Frank will say, no, I can nurse him. I can look after his minutes and I can just use him sparingly but effectively. Spencer's finally broken into the Spurs squad, which means he can provide backup on either side, but I think perhaps you would mainly use him as that attacking right back, and we would look to bring in a backup at left back, a defensive wide centre back type profile, and maybe someone who can cover both Van de Ven and Udogie, being sort of effective with the size of our squads. And obviously we have some difficulty with registering for Europe next season, so if one player can cover both left centre back and defensive left back at the same time, that could be an efficient way to use the squad. Let me know, what do you think? Do you think it will be a back 3? Do you think that I've completely misprofiled? Have I forgotten a player that I should have included here?